conversational value, I think, carries its own weight. So.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Pen out of my ear. All right. Oh, here. Let me throw my gum away real quick. What's up, everybody? Sam Heine here, bringing you another episode of Street Talk. Hope everybody's doing well out there. This week I had a chance to go talk to Joe Heron, who is the founder and the owner of Copper Kings Distillery in the heart of Butchertown, which was really, really fun because it's one of the oldest neighborhoods in town. And, it got to start in the late 1700s, and it was at its pinnacle and all throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, and very much a blue-collar haven. You know, a lot of butchers and stockyards and just this blue-collar type of demographic that really put Louisville on its back and built it up to what it is today. And it was just booming on the residential side, booming on the commercial side, and then it took a little bit of a slump after the flood of 1937, and it kind of slumped, through the mid to late 1900s. But as of recently, it's sort of resurged, and the residential market is booming, the commercial market is booming. But what I think is really cool, me and Joe, we sat down on the rooftop bar of Copper Kings. It's called Alexander. For anybody who hasn't gone, they make a great cocktail, and you just get this great panorama, bird-eye view of Louisville if you're sitting up there. And it's so cool because if you go out there, you can see downtown Louisville, the skyline in one corner. But then if you look over here, you can see over into Irish Hill and over into Clifton. You can see into Nulu. You can see into Phoenix Hill. Just all these neighborhoods that are very much in the same way, up and coming. But what you can also see is all this architecture and the integrity of design and buildings and just the houses as well. Just all the architectural nuances that you see out over this panorama view. They're in a big way very original. It's very historic, and the structures are very historic, and there's still a lot of them remain there today. And so looking out over that view is a lot like looking out over that view probably 100 years ago. It looks very much the same, but it's just a really cool energy in Butchertown because these new faces and families are coming to live there, and there's new brands coming to town, and taking these old structures and keeping the integrity of the exterior and original building very much the same, but taking the interior and just sort of breathing a new life into it and restoring it in a big way and breathing their brand into it. And that's what Copper Kings did, and so I got that perspective from Joe Heron, and it was a really fun one, so I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. So buckle your seatbelts. Once again, if you have any questions on the neighborhood of Butchertown, or anything you might see in the video, or just any inquiries in general, feel free to reach out to me. My number is 502-500-6469, or shoot me an email at sam@familyrealty.com. Happy to help in any way. So without further ado, you all enjoy the interview. What's going on, everybody? Sam Heine here, back at you with another episode of Street Talk, sitting here in the Butchertown neighborhood with none other than Joe Heron, who is the owner-operator of Copper Kings. Doing a lot of really cool things with brandy and gin and absinthe around the area, and I thought it would be cool to sit down with him, not only because Butchertown...
Don't forget coffee liqueurs with Heine Brothers Coffee.
Coffee liqueurs with Heine Brothers Coffee as well. There's the plug with the new dropping here. No, but he's doing a lot of cool things, and I thought it'd be a really cool story because the building that you're operating in is, you totally refurbished it. It looks really, really great, and a nice contrast in Germantown or Butchertown with the older kind of architecture and commercial real estate that's kind of reflects the 100 years ago version of Butchertown. So I kind of just wanted to get your take on what's going on around the area and what inspired you to go from
Minneapolis to Louisville, Kentucky.
So many questions.
I know.
Let's just start with Butchertown and talk a little bit about that. So we've been coming to Louisville for a long time. We're starting Nutri-Soda and Clifton using Flavorman as one of our partners. And one of the things that we launched the first barrel-aged cider in America which we aged in Jack Daniel's barrels, and we called the Jacket after my morning jacket.
Oh, yeah.
And we launched it. Shane Rito, my friend and head of sales, even here at Copper Kings, we launched it on homecoming concert with my morning jacket at Yum Center. And the first establishment to actually sell it was the Blind Pig, which was in Butchertown.
Oh, yeah.
And so we came down, and remember after the show, we came down to come and drink our cider and have something to eat, and it was really dark and gloomy, and in all honesty, I thought I might meet an axe murderer on the corner.
Very well could have, yeah.
And it was dark, and we came in, and the Blind Pig was just a lovely restaurant, and then meat after that upstairs. And so I remember when Leslie showed me this building, which didn't look like this at all, really run down with a very wobbly 70s warehouse attached to this 1940s brick structure, and it was familiar, and I knew obviously of the Blind Pig, but it was funny to come back after all of those years and see Butchertown, and Swift had knocked down one of the warehouses where the parking is now, so it kind of opened up the space. But Butchertown's always had this just hint of grittiness. It's probably less now than it has been for a long time, but there's this industrial, residential, community, commercial sort of interaction that's quite attractive.
Yeah.
Because it gives you like a foundation of creative expression and hard work. And I think that's what Butchertown for me is. It's about hardworking people that do creative things.
Right. No, I think that's a perfect way to describe it, because I guess whenever Butchertown was initially established, which it's one of the oldest parts of Louisville. I mean, it really goes way back, and it was
1796 to be precise.
There you go. See, this guy, he knows all about it. But it was very much a blue collar kind of haven, very industrial, and people, very bustling, and people coming to work to make things happen for the rest of the city, the rest of the area. And if you look out over the balcony here of Alexander, which is the cocktail bar up on top of Copper Kings, you can kind of just look out and see the old architecture and the old building structure and design, and it's almost like a perfect reflection of what it might have looked like, give or take, 100 years ago. I mean, there's so much history around, and it was very much a working woman's.
Yeah, and I think it's a cool name, huh?
Yeah.
Butchertown. It sounds
Totally.
cool, and it sounds interesting. And I still think that it's not so much a working class neighborhood anymore. It's
Right.
become quite upmarket residential in the
Absolutely.
main, and then there's lots of great bars and restaurants, from the Butchertown Grocery to Odeon to Butchertown Social, Lupo, and then you go to Naive and High Five and Fabaloo. That's changed in the last 5 years. It just completely turned into one of the more interesting neighborhoods of the city, the Brooklyn of Louisville, really.
Totally. Yeah. No. Absolutely. And it's very much a melting pot of other neighborhoods. You've got Irish Hill neighboring it on one side, and then Clifton and Nulu, and
Exactly.
you can see downtown.
And I think the interaction between Nulu and Butchertown is pretty seamless and symbiotic. It's becoming, an entertainment hub, and we now have Princess Point starting to be developed. That'll be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, there's big things coming over there. And
Well, the big thing, I think what you're seeing now is a reflection more of Louisville, not just of a neighborhood. So when you look at the Butchertown, it's Louisville City Soccer Stadium, that's a sign of a city that has big thinking, big ideas and ambitions. When you see Copper and Kings, you see a tremendous artistic sensibility and adventurousness, as well as a work ethic. And that, for me, those are things that I describe Louisville as, more than just individual companies and things like that.
Right. And that's another thing I thought was interesting, because you started Nutri-Soda and saw that out to success and sold it, and then you started Crispin Cider and were on the forefront of the cider craze of the United States, and then you sold that. And then you moved to Louisville to start a gin, brandy, absinthe, these alternative sort of liquors.
There's enough good bourbon. We need better brandy, we need better gin, we need better cordials.
I was going to say, it's sort of it's an interesting contrast, because this is the bourbon capital of the world, but if you started a bourbon company, I don't think you would stand out nearly as much, because it's so saturated.
I think we would stand out, in terms of a physical manifestation, because we're very much untraditional, modern, high design versus more of a traditional projection, and but whether that would be enough in the market, I don't know. I don't think so. Otherwise, I would have done bourbon.
Right.
I think there's really some incredibly good producers of bourbon, from Brown-Forman to Heaven Hill, to Jim Beam to Wild Turkey. I mean, you can go on and on. You can get to Peerless. You can, get to so many even smaller distilleries. So, for us, our business strategy has never been about a marketplace. It's always been about a vacant market space.
Right.
So marketplace versus market space, and that's where we're much more interested in the next thing, not the now thing.
Right. So I guess in closing, from the insider's perspective, and kind of seeing a lot of the restaurants and businesses and residents flocking to Butchertown and really recreating the brand of Butchertown, what do you see coming next? I
think the soccer stadium's obviously the biggest thing. I mean, that's March 2020. So the soccer stadium is finished, and that's going to bring a lot more foot traffic. I think you're going to see much more residential being built. I mean, there's a couple of new developments already in planning and permitting right now. And so once you get, people living, people having fun, it's going to create a neighborhood that's essentially integrated into Nulu and downtown, because it's so close.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool thing. I think Butchertown, Irish Hill, Clifton, and Nulu are very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that if the most important thing to happen once these developments are done is, how do you create a pedestrian, bike-friendly environment? Because that creates more of a welcoming, safer, easy access model. So, we're only at the beginning of the development of Butchertown. So, we can do better on lighting. We can do better on sidewalks. Brightside is a wonderful charity, really worth talking to, Sam, and what they do to beautify not only Butchertown but all of Louisville is important. I think no one is talking enough about Botanica, and I think that those botanical gardens are significant, and they're going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
So between Botanica, the Butchertown Soccer Stadium, Copper Kings, all the bars and restaurants, layered in with people living here full time.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a very, very exciting place to be. I mean, I feel pretty lucky that Leslie found this building.
Yeah.
And she has always had a great eye for property. But I remember her telling me about it, and I wasn't quite computing how close to downtown it was, because it's essentially downtown.
Yeah, no, exactly.
In any other city, it would be
right.
walking downtown. If you're in New York, it's it's 12 blocks. That's it, if that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really is, and it'll be very exciting, and it is a very cool. Anybody out there that hasn't been to Alexander, come out, because it's just a very cool bird eye view I mean, you can see into each of those neighborhoods we were talking about, and you can see a lot of the historical architecture combined with the newer architecture and the new concepts coming to the neighborhoods, and it's very much a fusion of the past and the present, and we'll see what comes in the future. So, yeah.
The future's pretty bright for the city, for the neighborhood, for businesses, for property developers, property sellers, and I think Alexander is a reflection of that. I mean, I think Alexander as a bar would fit in very comfortably in Hong Kong, New York, London, without any problem.
Totally. No, absolutely. It's a very transferable concept built around the city. So
it's an international concept. It's not a traditional parochial idea. It's about brandy and being incredibly stylish and modern and fashionable now. Brandy is very fashionable around the world.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of cool things going on. So everybody out at home, go get you some Copper and Kings brandy. And I guess that wraps up this week. Hope you learned something new about Butchertown. Joe, thanks for
thanks for chatting. It was fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to kind of watch you do your thing and watch the neighborhoods kind of come into their own, and appreciate the conversation. So
it's all about us together.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll see you next week, guys.
Thank you.